All right, thank you so much for staying with us here on Look Up Weekend. Time for our conversation tonight here on the program with Harriet Njoki Mboce. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you.
All right, I want us to start just immediately looking at the state of the Kenyan judiciary and also just your candidature for the LSK president. But first, let's just begin from what has been happening in the country as far as the judiciary and the executive is concerned. What's your assessment of this particular situation first?
I'll start by saying pole. We recently, a few days ago, experienced some gas explosion in this country, in Nairobi. We are aware that a number of people have passed on. To their families, we say pole. For those who are still in hospital or recovering, and even the trauma of it all, we wish them quick recovery, and we hope that the matter will be investigated quickly, that it will not happen again. Now, going back to your question, Amoy, on the state of the nation, you know, there seems to be a trend of what I'm referring to as state capture. There's a reason why the Constitution has established institutions to operate independently, even though there is supposed to be a relationship between them. So when we find that the executive does not want to respect another arm, then there's a problem. Remember, we are not saying that there's no problem within the judiciary. I am an advocate, I do litigation, and I have had instances where I have been dissatisfied with court decisions from time to time. Now, we have various options. Where you feel that there has been no foul play, it's a question that can be appealed against, then you appeal. That is why we have the appellate process. Where you feel or you have evidence to believe that there is foul play, for instance, issues of corruption, then we have provisions in the Constitution and statute that allows us to challenge or to raise those concerns with the JSC as against the individual judicial officers who are suspected of corruption. Remember, you cannot accuse an entire institution of corruption. Corruption is individual. You give names and say these are the people who have acted corruptly. So the problem here is a situation whereby the executive does not want to follow the processes that have been set out. And you know, even for a Kenyan, Wanjiko, it is important that institutions are obeyed. So that Wanjiko then believes, you know, now we have, for instance, the questions of affordable housing going on. If Wanjiko feels aggrieved or feels offended by, you know, an eviction, and they want to challenge the decision of, they want to challenge the government, if they cannot feel that the courts will make an impartial, you know, will make a decision without fear or favor, then they will be unable to address or to approach the justice system. So asking for independence of institutions is supposed to protect all of us. Remember our president, for instance, at some point he was taken to The Hague. If the justice system was not one that allows everybody a chance, we will not be having him today. So it's important, even as we hold institutions of influence and institutions of power, that we hold them with respect to the law. Because there's what we say, sheria ni msumeno, inakata mbele na nyuma. So let nobody imagine that they are above the law. Because when you begin to want to act outside the law can actually work against you.
Now, because you mentioned something important, and you say, you know, let me just ask, when the executive itself acts in this particular manner, we look at the executive, it is disrespecting the judiciary. What does that speak of the executive? Because now the common person needs to look at the judiciary and say, I can run to the judiciary when I want to seek justice for something that has been done against me, and I do not agree with that. So if the executive itself is casting doubts on the process in the judiciary, what does that speak of the entire system itself?
There's a danger, and we have been seeing it recently from those utterances, as well as before we went on break, I told you, and you can confirm, that some politicians affiliated to the government have actually said that even in the Law Society of Kenya election that is coming up, the government has sponsored candidates so that they can make sure that the Law Society does what the government wants. You know, that is a very dangerous narrative, because it shows that the state is interested in capturing all the institutions. And it is dangerous for the country, because it means then you will have an executive that goes rogue. It is important for the executive to know that even as it carries out its mandate, you know, it's important that people are actually able to respect government. Sometimes we may disagree with government, but it shouldn't be that when you disagree, I mean, in one of the videos that you were running in your bulletin, I had the head of state almost insulting someone for challenging him on something and referring to a bill that he has taken to parliament. That is very, it leaves us with a very bad taste in our mouth. We shouldn't have a dictatorship. You know, our constitution allows us democracy. It allows us institutional independence. So then we're able to check and balance each other. You know, it is very clear, and it has been said time and again, that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And sometimes that absolute power can actually eat somebody, and they don't realize that they are dredging themselves deeper and deeper towards the wrong direction. So it's important that the executive should abide by the rule of law. It is important that even the state projects are put on notice that Kenyans will not allow state projects. That Kenya is a country that is governed by law and governed by, and we have institutions. All right. Yes.
Let me come to something you mentioned about the elections that are coming up at the end of the month, and you say there are politicians that have said they have someone that they are interested in, they're supporting actually. How do you then, when you win, prevent the Law Society of Kenya from being captured by the executive?
You know, the good thing is, even as they're sponsoring state candidates or state projects.
Do we really have those state candidates?
Well, they said it. You know, it is not for me to say it. They said it themselves. So let their owners own them, because their owners have already said that they are sponsoring them. So you see, now I cannot come and say, oh, they are not sponsoring them. I'm not part of their arrangement. Let them own their people. Let them run with them. The important thing is this: because of the nature even of the constitution that we have, because of the nature of life, the members have a voice. And the good thing now is that even as the state has their candidates, as they have said, members also have a candidate. And their candidate is Harriet Njoki Mboce. And when Harriet Njoki Mboce wins and becomes the president of the Law Society of Kenya, she will then be acting on the mandate of the people, on the mandate of the members. The good thing then is that we end up with a Law Society of Kenya that is not captured. You know, unless, and you know the thing about history has taught us many things. We had a time in this country when capture had actually happened, and the Law Society of Kenya stood as the last line of defense. Right now, Kenyans have been challenging the issue of the housing levy. Right now, Kenyans are complaining about the cost of living. Right now, Kenyans are complaining about taxes. Right now, Kenyans are complaining about the fact that when our children wanted to go to school, bursaries or money had not been released. If all institutions have been captured, who is going to stand up for this country? So it's very important that we have a Law Society of Kenya that is actually above capture. Because it is not only important for this country or for our members, but it is also extremely important for the Law Society of Kenya. Because, Amwai, the mandate of the Law Society of Kenya is very broad, and it is even set out in the Law Society of Kenya Act. It helps the people, it helps, we can even advise government. You know, we have 15,000 advocates. So if the government is struggling with the comprehension of certain things, or if they're struggling with how do we make sure that this project that was in our manifesto is rolled out in a manner that is legal, they can seek advice from our 15,000 advocates. We have so many of them. So as an advocate of the as a president of the Law Society of Kenya, one of the things I will do even in my first 100 days is to make sure that I set up a robust public interest litigation team that will then be able to take up many of these challenges that the country is facing. Okay. So that every day we are not just sitting back and waiting for other people to raise those concerns. We are able to pick them and address them. Okay. We also need to encourage the government to be seeking legal opinion even as they are running some of these things.
Does the government involve the Law Society of Kenya enough on these particular issues?
It will seem, as we are seeing now, that the government wants to, the executive wants to operate in a silo. You know, when you look at Section 4 of the LSK Act, it actually allows the government to, and we also have the national, the NCAJ. It's a council, National Council on Administration of Justice. It has various stakeholders, heads of state agencies, including also representative, the Chief Justice sits there. We have the President of the Law Society of Kenya who sits there. The Attorney General sits there. The civil society representatives sit there. So we have institutions where the President can actually engage those institutions and say, we are planning on rolling out this. How do we engage? How do we make sure that it actually rolls out in the manner that is ideal, in a manner that is actually beneficial for the country? Okay. So the executive seems to be wanting to operate in a silo, and that is very counterproductive. Okay. You know, Amoy, if I have a question, instead of, I have many options. I could choose to be an island and look at it myself, and then what I decide becomes what I run with. Or I could think about it, research, come up with a position, then consult. You know, even the constitution that we have right now does not allow for that dictatorship. It requires public participation. Okay. And the courts have continuously pronounced themselves on the question of public participation.
Yeah, we are seeing quite a number of things going back to the public. Let me get back to the question of, state sponsoring a candidate for these particular elections. What threat does this pose to the election itself and the Law Society of Kenya? Should the advocates be worried? Should the society be worried about this?
Of course we should be worried. We should be worried because it is not, I wish it was a rumor, you know, but it's not. It's government-allied politicians have come out and said that they have state-sponsored candidates. Not one. You're saying it is not it is several of them.
So casting the net just in case.
Yes, and therefore it is a very dangerous position. So I urge our members to be extremely vigilant, even on that day of the election. I urge our members to be extremely vigilant because our election is supposed to be conducted by the IEBC, you know, and we know the challenges that are there. In fact, even the IEBC is currently not properly constituted. Exactly. We have seen the Banisa constituency, the MP passed on in March last year. Yeah. They haven't had a by-election. So we know that there are certain challenges that will be facing the IEBC. So the question is how ready, how prepared are they to deal with any attempts to rig the election of the Law Society of Kenya, because it is possible, as has been alluded to, that the state has projects, it has its people that it's sponsoring. But also then to encourage members, because Harriet Njoki Mboce is a member's candidate, I wish to encourage them to make sure that they turn out to vote, so that then the state can know that the people can actually stand up and save this country and save the Law Society of Kenya. Otherwise, we'll have captured institutions that cannot speak truth to power, and that is actually what we need at the moment.
So that is the fear, that as much as the state wants to get involved into this and into the elections and have a candidate, their preferred candidate, what you're seeking, the outcome could be very devastating as far as the society is concerned.
And the country. But members have a solution. We can turn up on that day and vote en masse. And make sure we vote for Harriet Njoki Mboce so that the members' candidate can actually win this election.
Now, let's talk about bringing these particular institutions together. As the Law Society of Kenya President, Harriet Njoki Mboce, how would you seek to maybe harmonize the relationship between the judiciary, the executive, and even the Law Society of Kenya itself? Because if the executive now will be fighting you when you are in office, then it will be very difficult for you even to just carry out your mandate. So how exactly do you bring people together?
You know, the beautiful thing, and why I insist on observing the law, is that the law has a solution to that. We have the Judicial Service Act, which sets up the NCAG that I was telling you about, which is a platform that allows the AG, the Attorney General, the Chief Justice, the President of the Law Society of Kenya, representatives of NGOs and all these other institutions to actually come and have those kinds of conversations and engagements. So there are platforms, many, that can be used to make sure that even the executive is able to consult before they make certain decisions. I have told you, nothing will be easier than for me to lend about 2,000 of my advocates to look at the pros and cons of a certain project in terms of, you know, if the government sought a legal opinion, we have advocates who can offer a legal opinion, you see. So the problem is where you have the executive wanting to go rogue, that they don't want to consult with the law. They don't want to get checked. They don't, that's all. If they actually took advantage of the legal resource that this country has, then we'll be able to tell them, you know what, here you have fallen short in terms of public participation. Here you have fallen short in terms of this and we, you know, the other thing as a president of the Law Society that I find very important, and I have shared it with you, one, within 100 days, set up the public interest, a robust, we have one right now, but we need a robust one that takes into on board about 1,000 to 2,000 advocates. We have many of them that are capable, willing, able, and ready to take on public interest litigation. The thing about public interest litigation, or any kind of litigation, is that even as it goes on, if the president or the state, for instance, or any other agency decides to comply with the law, the matter can rest. You see? The other thing is, if there was a proposal to look into the pros and cons of a certain project, we have advocates. If it's a commercial project, we have many advocates who are interested in that area. If it's a question of, you know, the other day, certain projects are running and many of them have fallen short on public participation. We have our members of the Law Society of Kenya who can take it up as a brief and be able to advise. You see? So what I'd like to suggest is, it's not a contest. It's not a fight. You know, I keep telling people, this Kenya belongs to all of us. We're all Kenyans. Brian, I don't think you have dual citizenship.
No, I don't.
Neither do I. You see, so when this country bans, all of us will suffer, you and I.
Exactly.
I'm sure there are many who have other citizenships, and we love them because they are, you know, part of the country. But the point here is this: because this country belongs to us, both those who voted for the Kenya Kwanza government and those who did not vote for it, this is the government that we have. So it is in the best interest of all of us that, one, we make sure that we are moving forward. How do we move forward? By making sure that the government does not fall short. You know, we don't want to get into a dictatorship. It is important that we remain a democracy, because that is what we voted for in the constitutional referendum. It is important that we advise the government to take the right route. And when it does not, that we call it to order. That's why we have checks and balances. And not just the executive, by the way, even the judiciary. You know, it's just that the president doesn't want to follow the law in terms of that issue. But we are not saying that there is no corruption. But corrupt people have names. Article 168 of the Constitution has a process. So let us follow the law. And when I become the president, it is not that I will go and fight with the president of Kenya.
No,
it is not. It is. You see, we will challenge him when he falls short. But when he asks before he falls short, we will certainly be happy to guide him. Yes.
Let me ask you a question, because we've seen those who challenge the president right now, because when you get elected and you get into office, it will be within the period that he's still in office. So when you get to challenge the president and you get a feedback where it is attacking the society itself and you as the leader of that particular society, how do you get to deal with that?
The beautiful thing, again, because I am a members project, I am then cushioned by my members. Remember, in the history of the Law Society of Kenya, we have had former presidents like Paul Mwite, former presidents like the former Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, who have actually been able to stand up and stand firm against certain kinds of pushback from the executive. So it will not be that I will be reinventing the wheel. Because my mandate is from the members, all I will need is to go back and tell my members, this is what is happening. We need to stand up in solidarity, and this is what we do. And it will not be a matter of reinventing the wheel. These people, the Senior Counsel Paul Mwite, as former president, he has faced a similar situation and he has dealt with it successfully.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me come to a question of integrity within the society itself, because those are something happened last year where there was a quote-unquote a fake lawyer operating, terming himself as one of a member of the Law Society of Kenya, and you guys came out and said, okay, he does not belong to this particular society. Moving forward, are you as the leader of this particular society, how do you ensure that people don't use your name to do their dealings and at the end drag all of you down?
It's very important, and the other thing that I plan to do within 100 days of my presidency is to persuade my council that we should increase the funds to the branches. Because you see, one of the things that helps with is that then, because we have 8 branches that in the Act as well, and the good thing about empowering branches is that branches are able to directly follow up and see this is our member, this is not our member, and also to daily and actively be able to deal with the masqueraders and those people who are, who either masquerading as advocates or who are not qualified due to various reasons, and they're still practicing, for instance, if they have been removed off the roll. So the most important thing, and it's the same thing that I go back to and say, when you are a leader at the national level, empower the other areas, empower their branches so that they're able to do more work. One of the things that I remember as very critical in some of the processes we've taken is by saying, for instance, governance, if you're looking at devolution, family is a basic unit. Okay. So even as you're looking at the Law Society of Kenya and being able to address the challenges that we are facing, you must empower the branches, you must empower what we call practice centers that are now smaller groupings of the branches, so that then amongst themselves, you see, like if Brian here is having a problem, before everybody else out there knows, the family here at Lookup TV will know that Brian did not show up today.
Yeah, exactly.
You see? Yeah. So we must empower the branches, and it's a pledge that I have given for me, because the most effective way of efficiency is by making sure that all levels are well facilitated to get the work done.
All right. Now, I'm running out of time, totally out of time, but I want to give you a minute to say why Harriet Njoki Mboce? Why you, and why at this particular time?
At this particular time, because the state is trying to capture the Law Society of Kenya, the state is trying to capture institutions. Okay. We have no room for capture as a country. We need institutions that are working. All right. So what I'm saying is that we will not allow even an inch of the mandate of the Law Society of Kenya being abused. Okay. Members must have a leader who is not captured. The country needs a law society that is not captured. All right. So efficiency, independence of institutions, we must adhere to them. Your president of the Law Society of Kenya should be someone who is able to be independent. The only person who can do that is one who is not captured by the state. Okay. Who is that person? Harriet Njoki Mboce, the members project, the members candidate.
All right, thank you so much, Harriet Njoki Mboce. It is a pleasure. It has been a pleasure having you on set and having this conversation with you. I wish you the very best in the coming elections. All right. Thank you very much, Mwai, and thank you to the entire Lookup TV family. Yeah. This is a great initiative. Thank you. The members of the Law Society, as well as Kenyans, need to stay updated and need to know the truth. Asanteni sana. Thank you. Harriet Njoki Mboce for LSK Presidency. All right. Which camera? This one. All right. We are taking a break here on the program. When we come back, we'll be taking you through some of the remaining stories as we wind up on the program tonight. All right. Don't go too far. We'll be back in a few. Thank you so much.